And welcome everybody to Keeping It True Bayou LSU Tigers. Of course, the month of August is here. The LSU Tigers are on the practice field, but we're still waiting to see pads. I'm excited to see what Lane Kiffin has started to show. Now that we're a little bit underway here in fall camp, we're learning more about this team, more about what this is going to look like. And I'm excited to share a little bit of how just changing a few things on the offense might make this one of the best LSU offenses we've seen, even surpassing some of those very special teams. We'll talk about it today on Keeping It True Bayou LSU Tigers. All right, well, first things first here. Look, as so many things have happened since the last time we joined here on this podcast, I find it absolutely critical that we discuss what this new team is. You know, you can talk about the coaches, you can talk about the returning coaches, you can talk about the coaches that were here but have come back after a while. Look, this team is based on transfers. If you're trying to really start getting into that football conversation, be it at the workplace, be it at the family dinner table or anywhere else, this whole conversation goes around transfers. But what's even more interesting, but also at the same time entertaining, is that some of the most critical pieces are actually the ones that were retained. Now, of course, the conversation starts with transfers because you had in excess of 50% of the roster flipped over. Now, again, you're carrying a NIL evaluation pushing $40 million for this team, so it was money well spent, hopefully. That will prove itself as the games progress. But look, here's the thing. Almost every single wide receiver that you brought in to join a brand new top-end quarterback in Sam Leavitt is a transfer. Now, the reason why I say it's interesting, we saw last week Trey'Dez Green, a tight end, was named to the Mackey Award watch list. Now, of course, you would say, well, Trey'Dez plays tight end, and he's obviously one of the top 5 in the country, predicted first-round pick. What's confusing there? The way how this team is slowly showing how they want to use Trey'Dez, I believe, is showing why. Again, I talk about it's some of the small things, some of the things that you may not necessarily correlate without a little bit of insider knowledge. But that's what we love to do with you here at Keeping It True Bayou LSU Tigers. We give you the knowledge that isn't always the first thing that comes to mind. And that is the fact that Trey'Dez Green, while he may retain a tight end designation for the sake of things like awards and other All-American purposes, overall, this is a player that is slowly being transitioned into a NFL wide receiver. Now, again, will he set up at the edge of the offensive line and maybe put his hand down a play or two? I don't doubt it. I think that's very likely going to happen. But the fact of the matter is, when you listen to how Lane Kiffin and all of his offensive coaches are starting to talk, Trey'Dez is looking to be a wide receiver for your Tigers. And this is where, you look at the season predictions, you look at the season projections, all of these numbers that are for very critical members of the offense. If you're talking about a Jace Brown, Jackson Harris, Winston Watkins, as well as, even Trey Brown, Malik Elzy, while all these players are going to have impact, no doubt, I think it really starts to show that if Trey'Dez takes over as, receiving target 1, we may not have him as wide receiver 1, but receiving target 1, it shows that the offense may be able to click a little bit differently, because now what used to be able to be a situation where you throw an outside linebacker on Trey'Dez, you may have to dedicate a nickel or a dime, corner in some type of a special package, particularly when you're talking about goal line scenario, red zone scenario. And that is where you can truly manipulate defenses in ways that allow your wide receivers, which, by the way, the majority of your starters are carrying very significant NIL valuations. They were not exactly, you're just going to get these guys. You have $1 million plus, for a receiver like a Jackson Harris, Jace Brown, almost, depending on what source you're looking at. These are high quality players, and they're going to show you exactly what they mean whenever you start to see game 1, game 2. But what I'm really getting at here is that you also bring in new running backs. You bring in a Dylan Jones. to complement Harlem Berry in year 2, to complement a Caden Durham who decides to stick around for your program for year 3. A rarity in some cases, and for many teams, most scenarios, somebody who, was looking like he would be a top level, All-American as a freshman coming in to now be potentially, you're talking about running back 3, 4, but the talent is still there. He's still there. He's committed to the program, and it speaks to what the LSU brand can carry. Again, for him, it's not so much about the dollars. It's about what he can gain from being a part of this team. Now, if you look at any observation at camp here, Dylan Jones is RB1, and Lane Kiffin, while you oftentimes associate him with high-powered offenses that don't necessarily correlate to, he definitely is going to focus on putting the ball on the ground. He does. Lane Kiffin loves to run the ball, so Dylan Jones is going to be RB1 unless something changes significantly. Once the pads come on, something like that, the man's a specimen in the best context possible. Harlem Berry, though, is not getting any worse. He's going to become improved in year 2, and I think that could really lead you to having depth in a position that has been lacking really since, I would say, 2019, to have a multifaceted running back room where you can swap guys out and you don't have to worry if somebody tweaks an ankle in the third quarter. What are we going to do in goal line in the fourth? And that's so critical to SEC football. A lot of people want to harken back to the days of, 9-6, game of the century. SEC football, while by no means has it changed to be, barn burners where we're talking about 45-38, you need to be able to go put up 30. 30 is not an unreasonable number to make sure that you're not only competing in what we'll call regular SEC games against the likes of, Mississippi State, Kentucky, Vanderbilt historically. No offense to any of these teams, but these are regular SEC games against regular SEC teams. Now you have what's kind of like a juggernaut class with Texas, Bama, LSU, A&M, although 8-4 is still open. The ATM has not closed. We will disregard what happened last year, and we'll see what happens as we get closer to that game. But nevertheless, I digress. And what could be potentially Ole Miss. Obviously the game on the 19th is one that people have circled, and if they can retain the quality, I think Ole Miss could show themselves to be quite successful. They have big dollars, but they don't have the dollars of the Texas teams. Obviously LSU is working on some type of a financial wizardry to alleviate their gap in endowment that you see compared to the likes of A&M and Texas. I wouldn't doubt if Florida were to gain some traction that they begin to show their might and start to flex the muscles a little bit. Nevertheless, we're getting a little bit off topic here. This team, with the number 1 offensive line in the country, very much likely to receive the award for top offensive line in the country, if the health remains. All of these factors together, Sam Leavitt, in what we've seen in his workouts, looks to be healthy. The ankle and the foot looks good. No major setbacks noticed, at least up to this point. This shows that this offense could be a top 5 LSU offense all time. And is that enough? Because I think so many people think about the Jaden year and you say, if he just had a defense. Well, Blake Baker retained. We're going to talk a little bit about that in the next segment here. I think the defense is just fine. And I think the defense is showing you that how it retained its players from last year is different than the offense, and it's going to make a critical contribution. But the critical contribution you can make is to make sure you are following and subscribing wherever you're listening to the podcast. By the way, don't forget the brand new, freshly designed TrueBayouMedia.com has access to all of our audio episodes where you can choose to follow wherever you like to listen to podcasts, be it Apple, of course, Spotify, and and Amazon Music, of course, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. RSS feed is there. Great opportunity for you to be able to take the show with you on the audio version. Don't forget, of course, YouTube, TikTok. We love you. We see you. And don't forget that you can follow and subscribe there respectfully. Look, the channel is growing. You'll see on True Bayou Sports Media Primetime, we do every Friday. We keep track this year. We're trying to grow. The goal is growth. And that means having an engaged community of people like you, people who are committed to these teams. We talk about our teams in the Bayou region. And of course, when it comes to the collegiate game, the LSU Tigers represent for goodness sake, over 2 million plus people here along the I-10 region, all the way through the boot, and then, across the larger Bayou region. So, of course, we want to give you the best coverage as we can, and the best way to do that is to make sure you are subscribed and your notifications are set to get our content as soon as it comes out. But what is also coming out soon is going to be a slightly reworked LSU defense, because while you look at the offense, if you designate who's a transfer, who's retained, it just fills with transfers automatically. You take a look at the defense, there was money spent. By all means, was there money spent? Yes, but it is not in the same capacity that it was on the offense. You talk about the best guys that came out of the portal class. We're going to work on this name. We know the player, but let's try it together for the first time here. Prince Will Umanalayan, who is coming over, a top quality defensive end. You also take a look on the other side. You have Jordan Ross, TJ Daughtery, Ty Benefield. There was money spent in this defense, and it really shows how Blake Baker wants to fortify his existing plan. The Weeks brothers have been a core to the middle linebacker position over the years. Witt retained. Of course, you have the younger brother, Zach, as well. He's there. You keep your best players in your secondary in P.J. Woodland and Tamarcus Cooley and D.J. Pickett. And the one thing that you could have improved on, your defensive line, you basically pour gasoline on top of, and you say, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to show you how good we can get. That's called intention. It's called focus. And Blake Baker has shown once again he is focused and intended. Now look, Blake Baker had every opportunity to go and become a head coach at any other team. A lot of us expected it to happen, but he didn't. He chose to stay, and I think this is showing that this team is committed to going after that national title. Look, I have several people I talk to who are close to the program. Everyone had a feeling that 25 was the year. 25 is when we should have seen a national championship run. But the injury that happened to Nuss, as well as the other circumstances leading into the season, created an adversity that was not able to be surmounted. And it ultimately led to where we are now, with a brand new coaching staff and changes that were in no way predictable coming into last year. The thing is that the transfer designations that are going to be shown, is it going to mesh? You have 70% of critical players that weren't on the roster, if that's both your freshmen and transfers. These players have to form a bond. On paper, they are the debatably most talented roster in the country. But if the bond is not set, and if it doesn't set in time, look, I'll give LSU the credit. They play great week one games. I see too many schools that go out there and, they don't want to play anybody, like a certain team in the Big Ten. We don't need to name them, but we haven't seen them play anybody of several years now, and it doesn't look as good any better for their schedule, Indiana. But now LSU goes against Clemson. LSU is a 9.5-point favorite right now. The line has moved down from 10.5. It's not the game that we thought it could have been, and after last year, certainly Clemson does not look like they are much better than they were last year. But the focus is still winning top-quality games early in the season. If you start slow in September, by anything other than a miracle, the college football playoff is out of the question. And if this roster has to deal with basically being a disappointment and the joke of the league, $40 million, you were out of the playoffs by October, it would start the Lane Kiffin era off on the worst foot possible. Obviously, Lane's not on the hot seat to be fired, but he is beholden to the expectation that was set through the amount of effort he's done. You want a coach that was going to go out there and give you his best, and he's done that. He kept his best coach in Blake Baker. He kept the best players on his defense, and every other hole there was a call, and the call got answered, and you had the number one recruiting class. You had the number one portal class. That's how you cement yourself to success. It has to translate, though. It has to translate. Now, this, of course, is our first camp update here at Keeping It True by LSU Tigers. We will, of course, do another one each week leading up to the game before we transition to doing more game coverage style episodes and, insight to what's happening game to game. We'll continue with these camp updates once a week at least, probably until week 0. Then we'll start to make a determination at that time. You can also hear a little bit more about the LSU Tigers on Keeping It True Bayou Sports Media Primetime. That is on Fridays here on the channel. We're excited to be back. Year 3 here on True Bayou Sports Media Network. The time has flown, but we're excited to have you. We're excited to have new friends join us here. So if you like the LSU Tigers, if you like hearing about them, everything that goes on, we bring you a different insight than a lot of other shows. I'm excited to have you join us here. Don't forget, follow, subscribe, and until our next episode, we'll continue keeping it true by you here on True Bayou Sports Media Network. Have a great day. This has been a True Bayou Media production. This show is for entertainment purposes only and does not render legal or financial advice. Remember to bet responsibly. Distribution of this podcast is prohibited without the express written consent of True Bayou Media or its subsidiaries. Thanks for being true by us. We can't wait until next time we keep it true by you.